Guys, what's going on? Welcome to Serial at Midnight. My name is Heath, and I'm joined for this conversation from the bunker by Matt Patterson, the co-host of the Warner Archive podcast, employee of big-time Warner Archive mover and shaker, film. Let's see, I'm gonna say screenwriter, producer, director. Did I hit it all?
Hugely successable.
As
you can see behind me, my palatial estate is there. I too have white tigers only, and a staff of thousands attending my needs. But I'm actually in a bubble.
Yeah. We've talked for like almost an hour before I hit record, and we've covered Degrassi.
Yes.
We've covered what was the other thing we were going to talk about? I was like, the CEDs. You were in the process of educating me on CEDs. I was like, we got to just hit record and launch into this thing. I wanted to talk to you just because you are super influential in like physical media, the physical media landscape. You kind of know what's going on, but you've also been at this for decades. You are, I know. You are. At some point before the end of this conversation, I have questions about something from this. I have questions, but
I haven't seen the Blu-ray yet.
Oh no?
No, I didn't because I was like, what is that? That's completely different art. Oh, I could spend a whole podcast talking about that. No one has ever actually asked me that, but I did. I played Satan.
Yeah, you're credited on IMDb as the devil.
Yeah, I am.
And Warlock, the Armageddon, which was the second one, right? That was the one with, is that the one with the graveyard finale? I think that's the one with the showdown at the grave. I could be wrong.
No, that is not a, well, it was, I guess it wasn't a graveyard. It was, the showdown was in Malibu Creek State Park was where it was shot.
Okay, that's the one I'm thinking about. And okay. So you're the devil? How did that happen? You got tell us the story, if you want to.
Oh, no, I mean, we could do a whole podcast on that. So when I graduated from college way back in 1992, I had the previous winter, I think it was that winter, I think it was February, I went to school in Poughkeepsie, New York. I grew up in New Jersey. And I was walking between buildings, going to film school, and my teeth were chattering, and I thought, I'm an adult, and I don't have to deal with this. And that was when I decided that I was going to move to Los Angeles, never being out on the West Coast, purely for my comfort. And so I had a friend who was actually two friends who were going to USC Film School, and I grabbed some other friends of mine who we were all in a comedy group, a sketch comedy group together, and we decided we were all going to move out, and we went and lived in these old houses, like two row houses across the street from the Doheny Mansion, which it's now a Catholic girls' school. I was like, that's cool. I'm going to live across the street from a Catholic girls' school. And Busby Berkeley's 1930s house. This was a Tony neighborhood, and now I was living in it. And from the second floor, you could see across the street, there were just some pipes, which I didn't know what they were, and you could hear them like humming. And people would be like, what is that? And I'd be like, well, that's the Catholic Girls College. That's where they make the host. And if anybody's ever been a Catholic, they, serve this like little, it's not even, calling it a Necco wafer would make it sound good. A little piece of styrofoam that is the Eucharist. So it seemed believable. But in fact, one morning I woke up and they were drilling. It's an oil well across the street, which, in a weird, ironic fate, is now a congressional Superfund site from spilling oil all over the neighborhood and poisoning everyone there. I was only there 1 year, so I only suffered a few side effects. A fourth year, that's not normal. Anyway, my friend who was going to USC, I was there for 2 weeks. The riots had ceased. Like the National Guardsmen had just left the corner. All the everything was burned around where my friend had us moving in. Like you had to drive like 5 miles to find a supermarket that was open. And he was like, somebody offered me a job being a PA on a horror movie, but no way I want to do it. It's $100 a week. And I was like, yeah, all right, yeah, I'll do it. And so I had never been on a professional movie set, and I found, and I didn't know where I was, and I didn't have a car, I took a bus to the interview, and then they told me, they were like, do you have a car? And I'm like, they're like, you need a car for this job, and I'm like, I'll have a car by Tuesday, which was like in 2 days. So I called my dad, and he was like, go to Rent-A-Wreck. And I bought the second cheapest car on their lot. The first cheapest car was a 1971 Dodge Dart with 3 on the tree, which I could drive, but it had a hole in the floor, like it was like a Flintstones car. And all I could think of was I'm kind of a messy person and how much stuff would fly out of it. And like I was like, what's the second cheapest car? And it was, which they didn't make anymore, it was a 1980 Datsun. And I was like, all right, I'm going to buy the Datsun. And I had to split it on 2 credit cards because I didn't have any money. And so I show up to Warlock, the Armageddon, and I was on the second unit, but the second unit didn't start for a while. And so I was a set PA, and I did classic things like get lost, show up an hour and a half late because I didn't know where I was, and I didn't have a map because I was like, what do I need a map for? I would just kind of wander accidentally into the frame. They would yell at me, but I went.
At any point, was your job to be like, it'll be soon, guys. Just hold on. I know it'll be soon. Did you get to do any of that?
Oh God, yeah. And they would put me like in front of cars, like to try to stop them. And I, I look very young for my age, but when I was 22, I looked like I was 14, and I I didn't even have like a safety belt on. I just had a walkie, and I'd like, what? No, don't go this way. Julian Sands is this way. Don't hit him. Star of boxing, Helena. I got to work with him, and I learned how to drive a truck because the transpo team took me under their wing. What else? I got to work with the practical special effects people, and there was a guy there. His name was Jimmy, and he had worked on Airwolf, and he was like, and I was like, Jimmy, were you there the day that there was the accident? And he was like, it was a terrible day. I told them, don't fly the chopper with the wind and the explosions, it could spread, but they didn't listen to me. And I was like, okay. Like, it was very surreal.
Yeah.
And I got very good at taking people to the hospital.
Wait, what? Why are people going to the hospital?
They were injured. Like, we were shooting in the desert, and they would get like stung by bees. And I also have a problem where I don't say no to anything. Yeah, and so I was definitely exploited. Well, exploited.
Which might be why you're here at Serial at midnight for the. No.
Yeah. Well, you thought this was going to be like a short answer, and I'm going into like a whole DVD commentary. I mean, the director, he had directed a bunch of the Hellraiser movies, and I got fascinated by the practical special effects, not just the explosions, but the makeup effects, because they had like old Hellraiser costumes that they were kind of recycling in this. And in the second unit, I was actually being very hands-on, and so hands-on that my hands are in a lot of the shots, like where I will double. I body doubled for Julian Sands, who's like 6'2", and then I also there was the main character who was in high school, and I would do him like he's going through a magic spell book, and it's my hand overacting, being like, this magic spell No. This one, like that. Also, he was like tied up with telekinesis and like vines, and like he had blood all over him. It's my chest.
Oh wow!
And of course, there's a scene in the film. Have you seen it? I know.
Yeah, you have absolutely. Yeah.
So there's a scene, which is actually one of the more effective scenes, where there's a woman who gives birth to Julian Sands. She like the moon comes out, and she like suddenly it was a very ectopic pregnancy, and then the fetus just like shoots out of her and across this like bloody floor, and then Julian Sands is born. So they built that set, right? It was about like this high up.
Mm-hmm.
And they put a piece of like latex over the floor, and I'm under the floor, right?
Okay.
And so they've got the little like fetus puppet, and they've got like four guys like running the tail and stuff. It was so cool. And then they had this special goop that they would use to make everything look like all liquidy, and it was like a silicone gel kind of. And they would pour the silicone gel on it, and then my job was to stand up right through the floor, the fake floor, through the rubber, and you see my nose popping through, and then it turns into a 6-foot tall man, Julian Sands, and I'm covered in goo. And so when the shot was over, like when we did it, when it was over, I was like, is there like a shower or something? And they're like, we didn't really think about that. And there was a stunt double woman who was there who was playing, like, because they had an actress playing, but then they had this bloody stunt double because he kills his mom. And so I'm covered in goo, and this woman who's the stunt double is like covered in blood, and she's like pulling herself on the floor. It was really cool. And then we're sitting there in the corner talking, like covered in stuff, and she's like, so what are you doing later? And I'm like, I'm still here on set, bloody lady.
I think I've got to drive some people to the hospital.
Oh yeah, well, and so when the Satan stuff came up, they originally had there was a lot of smoke machines in this, and the second unit shot. There was liquid. Well, they had liquid nitrogen and they had nitrogen smoke, and it was all like in this little pool, right? And so they had a guy dressed in the Satan outfit, he's stuntman, and he was sucking on oxygen because he was in this nitrogen cloud. So I had to drive him to the hospital because he like had too much oxygen and passed out. And so they're like, oh, we got to do this, I guess, with dry ice. And they're like, who can fit in the Satan costume? And they're like, Patterson. And I was like, well, okay, I'll be the devil. And so the producer of the film, I went on to produce he has some lovely credits. It was like the next day, so I'm dressed as Satan, but they still made me get them coffee. So, and I had a walkie, and so I'm walking around like the Satan outfit all day, and then they're like, okay, you're up, and I'm like, hold my walkie, and then I like put on the Satan hat, and this is the first professional direction I ever received. Was the producer of the film. He was like, okay, you are the devil, and you have been stuck in hell for thousands of years cursed, but all of a sudden, all of the gems have come into the right place, and they're spinning around, and they're calling you, and the gate to hell opens up, and you're seeing a light, and you're coming out for the first time, and you're free. But then the headlights come on from the hero's car, and they strike your eyes, and it's ruined, and now you have to go back down into hell, defeated. Roll! And I'm like, rawr. And everybody laughs. And they're like, okay, could you do it again, but with more evil?
Once more with feeling.
Yeah. So that was how I became the devil. But I was also body double in a lot of that. Anytime somebody was like bloody, yeah, I did it and was young, bloody and young. That was me, and male, because there were bloody females. And one of the weirder moments was in the middle of the desert. I was covered in blood. And they didn't know how to clean me off from them, but I insisted on it, so I got to swim in the water truck, which was there to put out fires. Yeah. So that was weird. Yeah, so I have way more stories of that movie, but I won't bore you with them because this isn't a commentary for Warlock 2: The Armageddon.
Well, I was gonna say, I don't think there is a commentary on this disc.
I can do it.
That's what I was gonna say.
There are Dukes of Hazzard scenes on that. Like there's a covered bridge from the Dukes. We shot on the Disney Ranch. Like there was an A-Team ranch, and I asked a lot of questions. I also got to be friends with the cockroach wrangler in the film, who got mad at me because I got scared because the roaches started flying, and this guy's like, I bred these roaches and they do not fly. And then there was these roaches like boo, 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 flying by him as he told me they didn't fly. That was like a scene from a horror movie.
Yeah, for real.
Well, we shot on the same sound stages as The Dragon and the Bruce Lee.
The Bruce Lee biopic. Yeah.
Biopic. So I had some props from that they had left around. That was where we were on those sound stages, and across from the 1990s Land of the Lost remake.
Wow.
So I got sneak onto that set. Yeah, I had a lot of fun with that, and thus ended my career of playing the devil. My grandmother, when I told her this story, she really thought I was a devil worshiper, and I'm not kidding. And like one of the last, like she was quite elderly, and she died like soon after that. And I did this, and I did another horror film, and she wrote me a letter, which was very out of character right before she died, which I saved, which was like, Dear Matthew, I'm worried about you in your dealings with the devil.
Aww, bless her heart. No.
I was like, I called my dad. I was like, you have to talk to your mother and let her know that these are horror movies and I'm not like hanging out with Anton LaVey, which I would have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, guy knew how to party, right?
Yeah.
Well, we're going to have to talk, like, off-air after this. I have more I want to say about this.
I have so much on that.
I will. Go ahead.
You surprised me.
Yeah, well, good. I guess the other thing I kind of wanted to talk to you about before we just have some general, like, physical media chat is you were the co-writer of, do you like my strategic sticker placement?
I do like that. That is... Yeah. That, and so also my podcast co-host Daniel Ferranti from Warner Archive also worked on that, because we I went to film school with the producer of that film, Eddie Schmidt, and Eddie has had a long career in documentary filmmaking and reality TV shows and some features. And Eddie was working with the director Kirby Dick, and they had worked on a bunch of films together, some of which were serious, but they worked on Eddie worked on Sick, which the Bob Flanagan documentary, which I recommend. It's such a great documentary, and Dan and I also worked on the DVD for that. I did the authoring of that for that DVD for Lionsgate. That was like kind of my first pro credit, and I made all the little animations because Bob Flanagan he was very ill with cystic fibrosis, and he did this live, these series of live shows where it was like kind of an S&M live show, and the DVD menu is like a tray of medical devices, and when you select the different ones, they come and like whoosh, they like slice him. And
what happened to, hold on, sidebar, what happened to cool DVD, like Blu-ray animated menus? Like now it's just like play. What happened?
So I helped make those for Warner Archive, and I can tell you what happened was they are so time-consuming and expensive that it started to kind of become more. I mean, while they are fun, and I did lots of them. David Lynch had come out around that time, and he was like, "Why are these DVD menus like so complex, and when it really should be about the film itself?" And like he just wanted his DVDs to just start playing because it was like it's about the movie. And the more that I kind of worked on them, the more I was like, David Lynch is right. Like this is all just a distraction. It should be about the film. That doesn't mean that I like commentary tracks like a lot, like and you know, like especially like vintage featurettes. I love vintage featurettes, and I love contextual. I mean, I really like extras. And fortunately now, you know, with digital distribution, there's lots of ways to contextualize a film, which you don't, but it's convenient on the, if you remember like 2002 or 2000, like up to like 4 DVDs would be like, you know, actor bios, right? Then there'd be like, hey, I can go to IMDb, right? But the good stuff, you know, it still remains good. But anyway, that was a crazy. That DVD was very deluxe. I did like a jukebox for it too. I remember, which was crazy. Yeah, and but anyway, so when Eddie started to, he and Kirby came up with the idea for This Film Is Not Yet Rated, which at the time I think was just a wonderful idea, and because most people didn't and still don't, but I think at that point it was their power was much more pervasive, like how ratings, rather than be just like sort of a framework for parents, started to affect what films were being made and how they were being made, like how the rating system sort of flip-flopped on the content, you know, and that it you know, it deserved taking a second look at. And then they tried to get that film rated. That was the great you know, kind of gimmick to it. And also Netflix picked it up very early on. Like this is pre-streaming. Put a lot of money into it for the disc because Reed Hastings, like this smart guy, like realized that there was a value to having a film and starting to build libraries. And so this film about filmmaking, it still remains in their library. It's still, you know, it's always been on Netflix service. So it's, you know, got a lot of viewers. My involvement in it was there are these animated pieces, and you know, Eddie knew, and we initially made like 3 or 4 of them, but only a few of them kind of made it into the final cut. But they were the comedy, and so that was my contribution to it, which I thought they came out great. And it makes it, and Dan was really instrumental in you know, getting a lot of the different filmmakers involved and picking the clips that went in, and how they pulled the clips was very interesting from a legal standpoint as well. And so kind of taking that experience in kind of like emerging digital media and you know how filmmaking itself was being changed, kind of going forward into what we do now, was kind of a little bit different of a background, but that background kind of came from sort of a physical media's place in a digital ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And because, I mean, honestly, you know, like a DVD or a Blu-ray is a digital product, but it's a physical product. And there's always been and always will be a place for somebody who associates or relates to an object, right? It's like almost a case study in like 90s semiotic theory, you know, but it works very well with the movie in that people want, you know, a thing to stand for an experience or a feeling, because nobody owns a movie, right?
Right.
Like, what is a movie? What is a movie?
But you can't call someone over and be like, "Hey, you want to check out my digital collection of whatever?" Like, it's a representation of yourself. It's a representation of your passion, all that stuff. You know, it's. Go ahead.
There's a signaling. No. I mean, but you're right.
Yeah.
But a bookshelf.
Yeah.
You know, all these things. People are attracted to those things, but I think really, you know, this is why consumer products that, you know, like tie-ins to films and TV shows and things, they sell well because people make an emotional connection to the story and they want a piece of it, right? And so, and one of those pieces is a representation of the film. And what's great is, of course, it can play the film.
Yeah.
Unlike
Exactly.
T-shirt.
That's true.
But I wrote kind of a fun position paper where I was like, well, what's the next step in it? And it's like, what if a T-shirt, or, you know, I was holding up, what if a water bottle could play a movie, right? Like, and then this could become, you know, like whether it's a digital code or it's like beep, you know, like whatever, right? This becomes your movie. I could lend it to you. You know, this is about licensing or whatever. But, and then your shelf would be like, you know, oh, this is Star Wars, and this one is, you know, whatever, Tin Cup, right? But like, I mean, that's just one possibility of the future. But like, you know, but maybe it would have something that, you know, like you have like a belt buckle and that's Batman or whatever, right? Like, because even when you go into like certain video games, they've taken that thinking with like you know, achievement awards or like a virtual shelf, where it represents
trophies,
and your virtual goods, and they actually have currency in game that can even be worth money out of game, right? Like those, you know, little Steam awards, which they put up like, these are worth 5 cents. You're like, well, that's right. That's a thing that represents my virtual game and my experience, and I can trade it. Like that's an interesting. I'm now going off into the weeds.
So in your own personal life, outside of your capacity as an employee of the parent company that you work for, do you have that tangible relationship with physical media? Are you a digital guy? Like, what are you personally into?
So, yeah, I mean, like, I'm you know, Dan, who I work with, is definitely
hate movies, is I think what you're trying to tell us. It's like you just hate them.
No, Dan is traditional, like, I will buy everything physical media, like comics, you know, like DVDs, Blu-rays, and he'll buy and he will display them on his walls and things like that. It's like signaling, right? Like, and he identifies with it, and his collection of stuff is huge. I am like the ADD disaster version of that, where it's like, I mean, I have huge piles of all kinds of media, and you know, I also am a fan of the films, right? But as I've gotten older, I rebuy, like, to almost revisit. Like, one of the more fascinating things that I found is revisiting films from like my youth, or things that I missed from my youth. Even like, you know, so it's like when you experience it from a different point of view in your life, it means something different to you.
Yeah.
Like, which I didn't realize that early on, and so it's fun to find like an old thing and I can still play it, and then it's like, okay, am I playing it because I used to play it this way, like which I have with cassettes, because it's almost like I found all the cassettes that were in one of my old cars, and then I got rid of that car like 10 years ago, which I was still playing old cassettes. And those were nostalgic. For the cassettes themselves were nostalgic. But the songs, when I hear them now, I hear the warping of the cassette. You know what I mean? Or like, my parents had an 8-track player, and I know where the breaks of some of the songs that were like split in the middle on the 8-track are. And when I hear it, you know, that's nostalgic. But now that reveals that I have a huge collection of 8-track tapes. I have a huge collection of cassettes.
And CEDs, right?
CEDs, which were not a nostalgic collection because I didn't have those as a kid. I bought those because people were dumping them onto eBay in the early 2000s at like 10 cents a piece. Yeah. And I was like, they're giant. They have unique art that was made for them, usually like in a circle, because that's what the art directors thought people wanted. And I had a bunch of players, which you can still have. They're kind of hard to keep running, and they weigh so much that I had to buy special metal shelves because they destroyed 2 different IKEA Billy shelves over time. They're like heavier than albums. It's like, imagine your album is covered in a plastic sheath that makes it look like a 3.5-inch diskette, right? Like at that size. So, and
what's the quality like on those? Like, what's the video quality like? Or have you even watched them to say?
So, in an ironic turn of events, I had my last working player was in the trunk of my car, and I used to live in
the trunk of your car. No, this guy.
So I was doing a live comedy show, and somebody broke into my car and stole everything in it. They took like all the props to the show. It was a comedy show, so they stole, and I had to write out a police report. So they stole a 1970s ventriloquist dummy, rubber pants, a severed head, a severed arm, a whole bunch of I had like 19th century wigs, like all this crazy stuff, which I had to write in a police report. And then I took it to the Rampart district in LA, which was at the time going through what would become one of the biggest scandals in police history from there, because they were getting mixed up with gangs executing other gang members, and like there's like money going back and forth. But anyway, so I went down there and handed in, like, I put this form under the glass, and there was this guy in like a tie and a short sleeve shirt, and I'm like, so if you see like a guy walking around with a fake gray beard and a big wig and rubber pants and a severed head, that's probably my stuff. And the guy's like, didn't say a word. They never contacted me. But they, I had a box that said DVD player, and they took it. But what was really inside was my CED player, which I was taking to get repaired because I had a Buddy Hackett. Sorry, not Buddy Epson.
Oh, okay.
Well, a Buddy Hackett concert CED stuck in there. And at the time, DVD players were probably expensive, and they're like, "Yeah, we got a DVD player," and they open it up, and it just plays Buddy Hackett for like 25 minutes, and then starts it over and over again. So the video quality was pretty good. It had scratches. It was a diamond stylus, but it could only hold about like 35 minutes of information per side, and then you had to flip it over. So some movies would be on like 2 or 3 discs. The white discs were mono, and the blue plastic discs were stereo.
Oh.
I mean, when they made it, they imagined, because video laser discs were so expensive to make at the time, they had a retail cost of like $80 or something, like in the very early 80s. But these, because they knew how to make vinyl, were like $20. So they imagined that a CED would be something you'd buy, and that Laserdisc would be something you'd rent. But then the cost of laser discs went down, and it became a niche format, and VHS and took off. And so by 1984 or 5, they stopped making them. So it's a very specific niche of films. I have 500 of them.
Holy cow! Wow.
They're like 10 cents each or 15 cents each.
I see them all over the place. You know, I'm a big thrift store guy. I don't know if you know, but we constantly hit the thrift stores, and they're like $1, and I see them all the time. But I have no way to play them, so I'm like, well, I don't have.
They're great gifts. They're like, I've been giving them away to like if somebody's fan of Star Wars. I have a whole bunch of the Star Wars ones, and they're like, and I'm like, you're gonna have to get a player together to see who shot first on this one.
Yeah. No tinkering. It's the original cut.
I know, because I've seen it 1,000 times and you can't. There's some extra bonus footage. That's what I should just say about everyone.
That's what, yeah.
But the value of physical media kind of goes beyond what's on it. But also, and what we like to say at work, right, especially with a Blu-ray, it's like kind of the most dependable premium format, right? Well, 4K as well.
Right.
But you even though stuff can stream at like 4K, it's still the bandwidth that comes through at the other end on the TV. It's generally just not as dependable or not going to look as good. So, if you want a premium format, that's probably going to be your best bet. But it also depends on how it was mastered and the condition of the elements, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like it's so complex. I've been doing this now for 10, 11 years, but it's just so complex, like what goes on in the background and how each and every film or TV show has like kind of a different story, right? What version are you going to use? What elements are you going to pull? And you have access to some and not access to others, and those elements have a history of themselves and a history of how they were used by different people in the past and how they were stored. And this even goes with digital assets. Digital assets are a little easier, but you can still pull, like if a mistake was made, at a certain point, it's like, okay, do you go back? Is there anything that exists previously to fix it?
Yeah.
Because, it's like, this is where I was kind of going before, and this is like kind of the spacey part where it's like, what is a movie, right? Like what is it?
What is a movie, man? Like what is it even? What is it?
Yeah, but is it the negative, right? Because the negative isn't the movie, it's just the negative. Like stuff is done to it down the line. Like is it, it's the raw file. It's like what version is the version, right?
And then something that, do you guys maybe encounter this in your in what you do at work, but we're getting so far from the creators of these movies, and there's no one to oversee certain aspects of them, and like day for night shots are getting unreplicated. I don't know what the word would be, but you know what I'm saying? Like,
so you're hitting on something that I've noticed. So there's a thing called like, especially in film, right? And a day for night shot. And when you go back, you can do this thing called a one light. And I'm not a post guy, but so, I've kind of picked up a lot of this kind of here and there. But it's like you kind of pick a setting, and if it goes, the computer is going to correct the day for night shot to day.
Yeah.
if like somebody isn't there, you don't pay the money to make it actually go for night. So because the day for night shot has always been an interim solution, right? Because it's not at night, it's not perfect. But when it starts to be lit for day, you're like, what is this weird contrasty shot with the deep blue sky? Like it bugs me personally, because I'm like, I want to go in and like correct it down, but that's like, how much money are you going to spend? How much attention are you going to spend on this content? We live in an era now, and like I said this 10 years ago, and it's only gotten more true, but the writing was on the wall even 10 years ago. Like, as a consumer, we've never had more stuff so available, so cheaply, looking so good, but you start to get spoiled. I'm not saying that people are, but like you're like, wow, this is great. What I want more of it. But at the same time, like me, I have a VCD collection, right? Like that MPEG ones, which are 360, like some of them are 360i, I think. And it's like, I love those because I would go to like Chinatown and buy them because they would come in these like crazy little boxes. I'd buy American movies, and I'd buy I'd be like, what's this weird Hong Kong movie? I sure hope it has English subtitles, but I like the packaging. You put it on and you start, like, I start watching it, and this is the same thing on YouTube. Like, it can be low quality, but if it's good enough, you're transported by the film. Like, it doesn't, like, some of the worst modern presentation I've seen of films is on an airplane, right? I saw a movie which I will not name, from the late 50s, which was, shot in like a CinemaScope, right?
Yeah.
But what they were showing on the plane was like they'd pan and scanned it, but but had black bars at the top and bottom, and then squished it every creative framing decision that was made by the original filmmaker was disobeyed.
Yeah.
But it was a classic film, and I'm laughing at it, and I took pictures because I was like, wow, this is like such a failure. And every A-B choice that could be made, the wrong one was made, right? To deliver this to the back seat of a plane, right? Just like worst case. Movie's so good. I watched the whole thing, and I'm like, man, that was a good movie. And I'm like, oh, well, that just goes to show you, right? Like a true like movie. I mean, like, I didn't pay for it, right?
Yeah.
And I remember it because it was so atrocious, but I also remember it because the film is a classic, and it was just so friggin' good that it didn't matter in a way. I mean, it mattered, but it didn't matter. So
good art will transcend whatever method it's being delivered in, right?
Like you're watching it. I mean, like, you could say it's like if you're watching like the best play ever on the other side of a fence through like a tiny little hole, and there's somebody's head in the way. It's still good. It's just you wish you could see it better, But right. I'm not looking through. I'm not rejecting it at that moment because it was free, and I got the front row seat behind the fence. But
it's like the whole drive-in movie thing, right? Like that's clearly not the best way to see some movies, but for those movies, that experience, it doesn't even matter, It's just like, I'm here, I'm watching this thing projected on this huge screen, and you will remember that experience, and you're probably going to remember what you saw.
So I saw Jaws for the first time in a drive-in at Cape Cod, but it was night. And it was like, it was second run. It was like, I think they re-released. It was a re-release like years later. And I was on top of the car so that I could see it better. But the fog rolled in, right? So it was like the tinny speakers. I was in Cape Cod. It was night. It was freezing because Cape Cod is miserable. And, but man, it was freaky, right? I could hardly see it through a cloud. And,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it was freaky. And then right after that, they showed Demon Seed, which was the first R-rated movie I was allowed to see. Are you familiar with Demon Seed?
It's not ringing a bell. I'm going to look it up really quick while you talk.
It's kind of Blu-ray.
I'm so sorry. I'll have to pick that up.
Well, briefly, it is probably the least appropriate film for a child.
They showed this after Jaws at the...
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the second one. It was like Jaws and Demon Seed, and it was about a computer who fell in love and forces himself on a woman and makes a computer baby. Yeah, Julie Christie. So I was so excited to see it in the drive-in, but of course it was so cold that I got in the backseat of the car, and it's 70s slow. I fell asleep like after like the second scene, and it took me like 20 years or 15 years to actually get a copy to see it. I was like, I missed Demon Seed, and then when I watched it, I was like, probably a good thing. But it was in the drive-in. But anyway, but I remember it exactly, and I was like 9 years old, right? Like,
yeah.
But it was good. But that's like, but that's.
Can I tell you one of mine too? One of my cool experiences.
Please do, yeah.
I saw Close Encounters of the Third Kind was shot. A lot of it was shot in Mobile, Alabama. I'm a Southern boy, and they shot it on like this at this airfield. What?
Are you by there? Are you by Mobile?
I grew up down there, yeah.
I by the way, I've gone through there a few times. I love it. I do love Mobile, Alabama.
I don't know how I feel about it. I've got the whole conflict about like you can't go home again, right? But
yeah. No. I'm just saying it because I'm not from around there, so I went down there like the first time, and I was like, what is this? Like it was very alien to me.
Yeah.
And I hadn't been to New Orleans yet, so it was like, because it's like the South and New Orleans like kind of mixed together in a weird way with like so much fried food that it like hurt my stomach. And there's like the fort. I just was like, I was mentally unprepared for it.
So was the battleship there when you drove through?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I was just like, my friend was like, we got to go. And I'm like, no, I need to buy some peanuts from the peanut store. Okay, go on.
So they shot a lot of Close Encounters on this, like the big climax and everything. They shot at this airfield. And they did I'm trying to remember what the occasion was. If it was like I guess it must have been the 25th. And they had this big screening. Spielberg did not come. Dreyfuss was not there. I don't know. Like, I'm not going to Mobile, Alabama. Like, hard to do Dreyfuss without S. You have to have the S's. I was in this movie and I'm not going back to. Anyway, so they shot.
They had enough mashed potatoes.
That's it. They had this big screen set up, and just literally they're like bring picnic equipment, bring your dinner, bring, chairs to sit in, and we're going to show the movie. And it was, like, as you say, it was cold. Yeah. But I remember the experience. Again, I don't know why no one came. Maybe somebody did come and I just don't remember, or they were so far away that I couldn't see them. Yeah. Right. But it was a really, really cool experience to see that movie, and especially the climax and everything, where it actually happened. So it's how, it's the experience itself is so much a part of the magic.
Did they whip out a giant synthesizer there? And were they like, bow, bow, bow?
I don't think so. I think I would have remembered that, but that would have been cool.
So I've been to Devil's Tower just specifically because of that movie, and I went at night.
Did it mean something? Did you feel like you were being spoken to standing there?
Well, I felt I probably shouldn't have gone at night, but my timing was off. But it really felt way more Close Encounter-y then.
There's got to be like coyotes and stuff out there, right?
Oh yeah, but the moon was out, so it backlit Devil's Tower, right? And like I was like, ugh, but being a movie fan, like I just can't disassociate this beautiful national monument from Steven Spielberg film. Yeah. They are both exist in my head just as big,
Absolutely.
But I'm also the person who will go stop at different national monuments and stuff and be like, blah 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 was shot here. Oh, it's Monument Valley. Oh well, let's talk about all the westerns that were here. Yeah,
I'm the same guy. Do you read the plaques and everything? You're like, oh look, it's a
read every plaque.
Yeah.
Not only do I read every plaque, I read a book about plaques. And I'm not kidding, because I saw this book and I'm like, I love every plaque. And the book about plaques asked this wonderful fundamental question. It was like, well, who put up the plaque and why? Right? And so then I was like, oh my God, plaques are the best form of propaganda. And they're like, and some places you'll find like dueling plaques, or like an older plaque that has one agenda, and then there's like another plaque like that has a counter story to the plaque. And so that's
do you remember the name of the book? I want to write this down.
God, I don't even.
Okay.
Just something about plaques. But
if people look that up, they should also look up The Finger, A Comprehensive Guide to Flipping Off.
Yes.
Okay. You co-wrote that book, right?
Yes, I did the layout as well. I did all the graphics, really, and I worked with a photographer. I'll announce it here, but I am working on an anniversary edition of it right now. It's my stay-at-home thing. I've rewritten a bunch of the text because it's 20 years old, and in our new age of social media and anger, it has gained new significance. Like we sort of thought, like at the time, like South Park was on, and like it was like swearing was becoming kind of less of a big deal. And I was like, well, will it cease to have meaning in the future? Will it be so ubiquitous it doesn't mean anything? And we kind of thought, well, maybe no. But like in the last, very specifically in the last 4 years, but like really even with social media, it's kind of taken on this whole new level of discourse, as I would like to say. Even with a woman being fired from her job for flipping off the president's motorcade. Like it's news. And so I thought, now's the time to come back and update it with new pictures, because it's a beautiful picture book, and it won an American Library Association award. Was surprising to me at the time because I wrote it for adults. Me and the co-authors never were like, oh, the kids are gonna really like this.
It's for the young ones, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, is that? Do I think like a 15-year-old? I don't know. But I just thought it was like a good use of, because I got a liberal arts education, and I turned around and wrote a book about flipping people off.
And so I will keep people posted on that new edition, but definitely go check that out. I think that's cool.
No, buy the one. There are tons of copies left. Well, not tons, but
it has sold very well. That's what you said.
It's sold out technically of two printings. But there's a such thing in the retail world, and this even gets back to physical media, as returns. And the publisher had gone bankrupt, and then they had a bunch of returns in the warehouse. And my co-authors went and got them, like where the warehouse was in Nevada, and loaded them up into a minivan. And we still have some. So it is technically in print still.
Awesome, very cool.
Yeah, that's what happens with discs, though.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna. So let's come full circle, and this will be the end, and we'll kind of exit on this one. But I would be remiss if I did not ask you about this because of your relation to the subject. People have been predicting the death of physical media as long as it's been around, and I know for at least the last 15 years, people have been like, "Well, you better grab it because it's not going to be around forever. It's going away." And I know that we've also seen a shrinking of the mainstream, like you go in Target or, Best Buy, they have less than they've had in the history of, DVDs. CDs are gone completely from Best Buy now. But I believe that to kind of reiterate what you said earlier, we are living in a golden age of physical media because we have access to more than we've ever had before. You talk about like some of the fans who've been doing this since the 60s and the 70s. Like if you wanted to collect film, you had canisters of film. And that's how you had to watch stuff. Now we have the convenience of a disc for $15, $20, $25. And as I just observe as that mainstream market has maybe shrunk, just I think also for limitations of space more than anything really, is you can't stock as many releases as are coming out for the sales return that you're going to get. Like how many people are going to go into a store and be like, I want a 1945 musical and I want it to star so and so. But we have so much, and it's that golden age of the choice. And I observe now we're kind of coming out of this where, less popular among, Frank the truck driver, but bigger for us, for the collectors and the enthusiasts, right? So I'll let you take it from there.
You're pretty much kind of on the right thinking, like, okay. And when I say right is it's like, trend is the DVD format is 22 years old, right? That's a long run. But DVDs, to be honest, outsell Blu-rays and 4K by quite a percentage because it has a very large installed base and people know what it is, and mainstream ones like ones geared toward the more mainstream customer are still very reasonably priced. But the mainstream customer has changed. People, especially DVDs, I'm going to call them normal people, but like just sort of a normal consumer with mainstream tastes. They still rent at a Redbox. And if you're in an area that doesn't have like great internet, like the middle of the country, sometimes a DVD or a Blu-ray is the only way you can see a movie if it's not on your on-demand cable, right? Like, or whatever, however you get it, like it's maybe not on satellite. Like I've been at people's houses like in rural Michigan, and like they have tons of physical media, like not like a collector. It's usually like the discs are like piled up on on the piece of furniture. And they're like, well, this is what we got this week, and they pop them in, or kids watch them over and over. It's still consuming them the same way they consume them, but as the technology changes and bandwidth increases, that mainstream consumer is going to be less and less. And Excuse me 1 second. I have a thing that's beeping.
It's okay.
Beep 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 beep. I have diabetes. This is a continuous glucose monitor / pump, insulin pump. So it's telling me that all of the corn chips that I ate just before this have raised my blood sugar, and that I need. Yeah, I know. You
need to go take care of anything?
I did it. I did it. Done. That was the magic of technology.
Wow.
That was insulin on demand. But if you look at the music industry, right, like one of the things about movies is that you can always kind of look to where things are going from what's happening with music. And because they were the first to be affected by digital piracy, Napster, and then they were the first to have, streaming like Pandora, and then it was, of course, iTunes. All that has ended up where we're in a place now where CD sales have fallen, but vinyl sales have never really been stronger, I guess, year over year, right? And people will buy vinyl. They have record players, but sometimes people don't even really play the vinyl, and vinyl, especially with indie labels, will come with a download code, right? And that because of the artwork, with the gatefold or whatever, that represents you're a fan of the thing, and that is for collectors, and that's, I think, where physical media is heading, into something similar like that. Is it's like for collectors, and you're going to have a sort of wider breadth of product than what will be maybe on a streaming, or maybe streaming will, but it'll have a wider breadth of higher quality releases, because that's what a consumer demands. And while there are a lot less collectors, there's still enough, if you have a good distribution model and you keep your costs low, to service that market. But if you look at DVD releases, right, because this is where you're talking about menus, from like the height of DVD was like 2007-ish, right? That was the apex of it. Yeah. So if you're from maybe 2003 to 2006-07, that's where you're gonna see all of the extras and the extra features, because they were selling, sometimes million discs, right? And so you could stuff the movie with things, and people would purchase them at these big box stores, and it was wonderful for collectors, and at the time wonderful for consumers. Everybody won. But as that shifted, as not just Netflix, which started in like 2006 or so, 7, as the streaming version, it just became easier and less expensive for people to rent on, online. The video on demand product became more diversified through, it just, and from the studio standpoint, when you have a return, that becomes, like a certain cost, right? Like there are, I forget how many Walmarts there are. I'm just going to pick like a number like 450. I think it's something like that, right? Like big Walmarts. Okay, it might be more. I don't know.
I'll look.
But if you need, let's say to fill up a shelf, you need 10 discs, right, on the shelf per Walmart. That means you need, 5,000 copies just to put stuff on the shelf, to get it up.
There are 4,756 Walmart stores in the United States.
Okay. I was off by a factor of 10.
A lot. Let's say there's a lot.
Yeah, because I was like, well, for that, I was like, oh no, that's a pretty good.
You're doing math and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. For 4,000, you need 10 each. That means you need 40,000 just to send it out to Walmart, right?
Yeah.
But like with TV series right now, contemporary TV isn't consumed as much on disc. Let's say you sell like half of that would be pretty good sales, right? But you're getting half of it returned, just because in order to get that sell 20,000, you got to ship 40. So what we have is a different model. It's not in a Walmart. People may not see it as much, but when you assemble them on demand, and whether that assembly is from a spindle like our Blu-rays, like we get spindles where they're just traditionally replicated, and then when an order is placed, they're pulled from the spindle, a cover is made, and they're put in, and then now it's a piece of inventory, right? And it's shipped off. So you don't have to worry about returns, and then you don't have extra supply going into gas stations for $1.99, so as from the studio's point of view, that gets out into a collector's hand who pays attention, maybe less to a consumer's hand, but they can maybe find it if they do a search, right? They've got to take an extra step. It's kind of a win-win, and we're the only big studio that does it, and other studios have not been able to replicate that because it kind of takes very specific skill set to kind of pull it off. But that's something that, personally, like my personal life, from my background of working in like independent films and like talking, like that's kind of more my mental state is less about, going and setting off a giant marketing cannon, and I like to pinpoint people with maybe spitballs, cleverly timed spitballs. Oh, I better get that new Blu-ray. Yeah, but that's kind of the fun business part that I got immersed in, and so as a creator, right? Like it's not a creator, but like somebody who's worked getting coffee on sets and playing the devil to somebody who's getting home video product 20 years later into somebody's hands. It's very interesting to see how these, what some people at the time thought might be something more disposable, how they can kind of live forever, and that's it's kind of fascinating.
It is
what draws me to the process in the industry.
Well, I appreciate you coming here to talk not just about your professional involvement with some of this stuff, but some of the behind the scenes stories as well. And you bring a ton of experience to, so many, me, the consumer, me, the movie fan, so much of what I love, like you have had hands-on involvement in that, like a lot. So thank you for that. Thank you for keeping this stuff alive.
But and this is where I'm going to sound like a commercial. You are the ones who also keep it alive, you personally and everybody watching, because without people being interested in this, it wouldn't exist, right? Like there's a version of this kind of distribution where we fill a shelf and it sits there and we hope people find it. And does that work? Yeah, I mean it does, but I think it works better if we, like me and and some of the other people, can interface and talk to people about it, because that way we can almost act as intermediaries in figuring out what should be done and to help get it out there, so it isn't like just tossed against, even though some people feel it's tossed against a wall, but there's just so there's just so much stuff coming out from new and old that you need people like you and fans and other people to kind of help other people sort through and make good decisions. or at least fun bad decisions, because
those are valuable too.
You can't bat 1,000 when you pick out a movie or a TV show. And some people, and I know from talking to you, and I know me, I'm willing to sit through the bad movies to recommend them to you. Not so you don't have to, but so I can tell you, you're going to love this one. But none of the ones that I do professionally. Only everyone's a gem. The other studios.
Well, if you're like me, there's something to like and to latch onto in everything, right?
Oh, when I do the podcast, it's very funny because like sometimes I'll be like, so I really like the hairstyles, and I hear myself, but like I'm like, no, I really did. Like I'm being really genuine. Like and especially with the Blu-ray, like my eyes will just like sometimes go like, and especially if I've seen the movie before, I'm like looking at like the windows and like, you know, oh, it's New York City, 1952, and I'm like, oh, look at the walk and don't walk signs are like little, they're not flashing, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like,
movies are time machines, and sometimes things that we lose over time, they're only preserved in movies. Just everyday little bits of life that we have long forgotten.
And nobody points them out in movies like, well, this is how we crossed the street in New York in 1952. Like, you know, like that's, they just do it. And I'm like, ooh. Kind of a funny thing, like early, like 2009, when I first started working with Warner Archive, I was like, oh, we should take, you know, these movies and stuff to Comic-Con. And at the time, we didn't have a lot of genre stuff, but we had some. And some of the people were like, why would people who like Star Trek and stuff like these old movies? And I kind of looked at them and I'm like, because they're other worlds. Like, you know, like old movies are almost in a way science fiction, because it's like a series of what ifs. I mean, not just the movies and the plots and stuff, but like it's I call it the greatest cinematic universe ever. It's called history, right?
Nice.
I'll exist in it.
Oh, we're in the movie.
Yeah. And but that's of course because I only think that the world started when I was born, and you're all going to snuff out when I do.
We're all in our own stories, right? So
yeah,
makes sense.
There's a great backstory, and it's called history.
Nice. Nice. And there's plaques. There are multiple plaques for that backstory.
God, there are plaques. Okay, one last thing with plaques.
Okay.
I love plaques so much that I take, and I bought the program that Google bought, but I do like the Google Translate, and I like hold them up to foreign plaques when I'm in other countries to try to read them. And I'll be like, oh, I think there was a battle here and some guy died. You know, I'm getting some words. But I will do it. I will read any plaque. It's terrible.
It's fantastic. It's glorious. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Woo! Glory. Okay. Matt Patterson, thank you. Tell people where they can find you. Give all your, just plug.
Yeah, if you want to enter into my brain, at Mr. Matt Patterson on Twitter and Instagram is good, and you can hear me on the Warner Archive podcast, which you can find on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, et cetera, et cetera.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for talking about this stuff, telling your stories. Yes. All right. Well, until next time, for Matt Patterson, for Serial at Midnight, my name is Heath, and I will catch you later.